السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. Inshallah, as usual, we'll have the hadith and dialogue, inshallah. And to tonight's hadith that I want to share is a very famous hadith, but I want to have a special reflection on it from perhaps not the common perspective. And the hadith is من أصبح لا يهتم بأمور المسلمين فليس بمسلم. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, whoever becomes at a state or in a state where they don't care about the affairs of the other believers, they're not one of the believers. And this yahtam is what I want to reflect on briefly, inshallah. But before I go on, as we intend this session to be more of a dialogue, I want to ask mu'mineen and mu'minat to share perhaps their perspective on so far the hadith. There are two ways of approaching it. Either I share my perspective first and then you share your perspective, or vice versa. But I would rather hear from you first, so I'm not influencing your perspective. You are giving your own perspective and I'm learning something new perhaps. So again, the hadith is very famous. However, and anyone, especially the youth actually, I would love to hear from them. The hadith again is, whoever becomes in a state where they don't care about the affairs of other believers, they're not amongst them. Then he or she is not one of them. So we don't want to be obviously considered no longer amongst the believers. We want to maintain our faith, maintain our position in the mu'mineen, in the believers. And so how do we make sure that we don't get there? What is your perspective of not caring about the affairs of other believers? Yeah.
Us as Muslims, if we kind of disregard our oppressed brothers and sisters around the world, we are pushing ourselves away from our faith and weakening our beliefs.
Very good, mashallah. Anyone else wants to share their perspective perhaps?
What's the question again, Shaikh?
So the hadith I shared, من أصبح لا يهتم بأمور المسلمين فليس بمسلم. What's your perspective on that? What can you share that, like something that comes to your mind? Yeah.
There is another saying that the Muslim Ummah is like a limb of a body. If a limb is in pain, the whole body should feel the pain. In the same way, anything that is injurious to the other Muslims, we should be aware and conscious about it.
Ahsant. So the other hadith that our brother shared is how the believers are like a body. And if one limb in the body is in pain, then the rest of the body cannot be at rest or at peace. You know, even if you have a toothache, you cannot sleep, or you will have, extreme difficulty resting or having any sleep simply by having a toothache. So the hadith, actually, this is based on a hadith that the believers are like a body, and if any of them is aching, then the rest cannot be at peace. Yeah.
What I would like to mention is the hadith itself is very nice and beautiful, but we as a Muslim Ummah always try to find excuse, not or maybe interpret the hadith different way, that find a way that could escape. What does it mean to be part of Ummah, do some here
Yeah.
with each other.
Yeah.
Always find excuse not to be, no, we say no, it's not this way, it should be that way.
Yeah, so we find reasons why we justify what's happening rather than being pained at what's happening. Yeah. So inshallah, so that we can keep this brief, I want to share a little bit of my perspective on this. Ham, yahtam comes from ham. Ham is when you have some sort of worry, you know, something that worries you, something that's on your mind, something that's perhaps in some, you know, some may suggest eating at your mind, you know, something that's really bothering you, okay? And therefore you're not at ease. Someone who yahtam comes from that, okay? Yahtam comes from ham, meaning what? One who becomes somehow disturbed, uneasy because of certain things that are happening. Okay, so that is actually the essence of the hadith, is to say that you should not be okay, or you know, you should feel, you should empathize and feel with anyone who's in difficulty, in pain. And here the believers is to, just to be clear on this, the believers is very inclusive, and the only ones outside the circle of the believers in this particular hadith are those who are at war with the believers. We need to be very clear on this. So it's not just those who are labeled Muslim, or just those who are labeled specific party within Muslim. That's one of the sisters was suggesting we make up excuses that these are different parties, you know, they have different ideologies. No. The circle should be much larger. Our care and our concern should go to any, in fact, human being who's not in opposition or at war with the believers. Okay, so that puts them in that circle of immunity or care, at least. The hadith that is very famous from Imam Ali alayhi salam, in fact part of his sermon, the sermon known as Al-Jihad. In there, as he was encouraging his companions to rise against oppression and against the then tyrant and oppressor Muawiyah, he said to them, it came to my knowledge that somebody, and he specified that someone or some lady, he specifically mentioned that she is not a believer, or not a Muslim. Okay, he specifically mentioned that, perhaps for this very reason, because he says that it came to my knowledge that this lady in Anbar, another city, so no borders, not in our city, another city, not a male, it's a female, not amongst the Muslims, she's a dhimmiya, in other words, someone of other faith living amongst the Muslim. But regardless, she was oppressed over there. By force, they took her anklet of her foot or around her ankle. Therefore, the Imam says, if a believer, فَلَوْ أَنَّ مُسْلِمًا مَاتَ عَلَى هَذَا, if a believer dies in agony because of that, it's well worth it. I would not blame him, he says. So the circle is much bigger. If we care, if it's something that bothers us, therefore it leads to action. So the emotion leads to action. What kind of action? That depends on what one is able or capable of doing to minimize or eliminate the pain of others, the sufferings of others, to the best of their ability, whatever one can do. But that emotion is important, because unfortunately, sometimes when we watch the world around us and so many news are coming, sometimes we may get desensitized. You know, we don't have those feelings or emotions anymore, and that is the problem. If we get to that point or position where we don't care anymore, then there's a big problem. Then we are no longer living for akhirah, we're living for dunya. As long as I'm okay, I'm living good, everything's good. That should not be the state of a believer. They should be constantly in a state of concern and care for others, because they realize that they are cared and loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, cared for and loved by God. Therefore we still care for them. And at any time that we hear something is happening for anybody, any believer, any person who is suffering in this world, a believer should be concerned. And that concern again is an emotion. However, a sincere and genuine concern would eventually lead into action. I don't want to keep you any longer. Inshallah, we'll proceed to Salatul Isha. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.